A lot of you jumped in and started following me from my biscuit video, and I love those biscuits. But when we're talking about a Thanksgiving meal, you need a really good yeast roll. That's what we're going to make today. Jump on in and make it with me. Hi, I'm Mary Catherine, and welcome to my table. I am so excited to bring you this recipe today. This is one of those dishes that it is a hit every single time I make it. And don't be scared when we're talking about yeast rolls. They're not that hard. They're really simple. You can make these. And the best thing is, I'm going to teach you a trick where you can actually make them ahead of time and make your life easier on a day like Thanksgiving Day. The first thing that we want to do is start with 2 cups of milk, but we want our milk to be warm. So I'm going to put it in the microwave and warm it. I'm also going to go ahead and put in 1 stick of butter directly into the milk and let it get softened up just as well, and make sure everything is warm. We don't want it hot because we're going to add our yeast to it later. And if it's too hot, it'll kill the yeast, but we're going to get it just nice and warm. Okay, this feels warm to the touch, but it's not too hot. And you can see that that butter has started melting in there. So this is about what we want to look for. My butter was cold, so let me just tell you that. If your butter is already room temperature, then you won't need to go as long. But this went for a little over a minute and a half. Every microwave is different. You may need a minute and 40 seconds, minute 45, 50 seconds if you have a microwave that's not as powerful. We're going to put this directly into our mixing bowl. And then we're going to start adding our other ingredients. The first thing I'm going to do is add 2 packets of our rapid rise instant yeast. This is 2 tablespoons. And the warmness of the milk and butter is going to start activating that yeast. And then, as with most yeast doughs, we're going to add just a little bit of sugar. It's not going to be enough to make these taste sweet. It's almost 1/4 of a cup. You can go up to 1/4 of a cup if you want. But that's just also going to help activate that yeast and just make them come together really nicely. And now I'm going to add 1 egg. And we're going to do 2 teaspoons of salt. And now what I have in here is plain all-purpose flour. And I have about 5 cups. It may be just a little over 5 cups. For this recipe, we're going to use somewhere between 4.5 to 5 cups. And then we'll have a little bit of flour left later so that we can roll out our rolls. But what I'm going to do is add it 2 cups at a time into this mixture. Let it mix really well. Then we'll add 2 more cups until we get just the right consistency. So I'm going to add 2 cups now. This is a 1/2 cup measuring cup today. And then we'll let the mixer do the work. Okay, now you're probably looking at this right now and thinking, this looks like a mess. But that's what it looks like at this stage, so don't worry about that. What we did, we let it go for, 1.5 to 2 minutes. You want to do that between every cycle of the flour that you add. So it's gone for about that long now, and it's time to add 2 more cups. And you know it needs at least this much flour, so you don't have to worry during these first 2 stages of adding flour. And there's our 2nd cup. You don't have to worry about, are you adding too much? Because you know it needs this much. And then we'll go back in at the end and finish it off as needed. Let it go about 2 more minutes now, 1.5 to 2 minutes. And I just have my mixer on low. And you can see now it's starting to look like dough. Okay, and at this stage, you really can start to see the dough come together. You see it starting to pull. And that's great. So we're going to go in now. So we've added 4 cups of flour total at this point. We are going to need at least another 1/2 cup. So I'm going to start with that. And we're going to see what it looks like. And we can go in with up to 1/2 cup more if we need it. And that's part of why you don't have to be so specific with how you measure each bit of flour that you're putting in. You don't have to do the dip level pour method, because at the end, we just are going to gauge it and see what this dough looks like. Add a little more flour as needed at the end carefully. And it still looks like it's fairly sticky. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to fill this cup about halfway. So that's about 1/4 cup I'm going to go in with. And you can turn it up a little bit, turn your mixer up a little bit on medium at this point if you want to. And so what you're looking for is dough that you see it's pulling pretty well, and you want dough that holds together. And then a really good way to test it is just to feel it with your hands and see how sticky it feels. Let's see. Let me turn this so you can see. You see how it's still quite sticky to touch? So that means I need to add just a little bit more flour. So I'm going to do that now. And remember, we could do another 1/4 cup if we needed, and I think I'm going to do that. So there we go, about 1/4 cup. And that means we have added a total of 5 cups now. And now with that bit that we just added, you can see it's really starting to pull that dough all together. Even better. I'm going to turn it up a little bit. And then you want to let it continue to mix for just a minute or two. And that's just going to kind of help that gluten in these yeast rolls be exactly the way we want it to be. You don't want to overbeat it, but you do need to continue to beat this enough so it's not like a cake. You know, if we're mixing a cake up, once we add those dry ingredients at the end, once it comes together, we stop mixing because the cake will get too tough. But this is a little bit different than that. So now that we've finished adding the flour, we don't just immediately stop. And I'm going to test it now. Yeah. This feels good. There's just a little bit sticking to my finger, but I can just tell it's not super sticky. We've added 5 cups. So I'm going to stop there. And all we're going to do at this point, we'll leave it in our mixing bowl and we'll let it have the first rise. And that's probably going to take maybe 1.5 to 2 hours. You'll need to watch it. You know, if your house is cooler or warmer than mine, or just even the location of where the dough bowl is sitting in your house is cooler or warmer, that can make a difference. So you'll want to keep a watch on that. Okay, now the final step before I just let it sit in the bowl and rise, I like to get all the dough from around the edge, and I'm just going to use my hand. It gets messy, but it's the best way. Just kind of clean it off around the edge of our bowl. You want the dough to all sit good and together. So there we go. We've got it down there. And then I take just a little bit of oil. You probably only need like a teaspoon or two, or probably a tablespoon or two, sorry. And then get some of that oil on your hand and just run it all around the dough so that it really just makes it all stay together well. See like that? See how it pulls away from the bowl now? and it's not sticking to it. Just that little bit of oil makes that difference. So now at this point, you want to cover your dough to let it rise. I'm just going to use a light, thin, clean towel to lay on top of my bowl. If you wanted to, you could also use just a piece of saran wrap, plastic wrap, and cover the bowl with that. But either way, just cover it, leave it, and in an hour and a half, check on it and see if it's ready to do the next step. And what you're looking for at that point is for your dough to be about double in size. So we'll check it then and see what we need to do. It's been a couple of hours and our dough is ready. Let me show you what it looks like. You can see how it's just about doubled in size. And that's exactly what you're looking for. So now I'm going to go ahead and roll out the dinner rolls and show you how to do that. And I'm just going to use some of this flour we had left in our little pitcher. And I'm going to sprinkle pretty generous bit on my counter. If you have a pastry sheet or something you want to use instead, that's fine. But I just have my counters clean and I'm using them. And then we're just going to kind of beat the dough down a little bit as you get it out. So you can see how it's back down in size. And I'm going to just use my hand. If you want to cut it with a knife or something, you can. But I'm just going to do it in the bowl. I'm going to kind of mark halfway through the dough. And we're going to work with it just in 2 halves. So there's my first half of the dough. And this is where you do want to work a little more flour into it. And just knead it a few times. You don't have to do it a lot. Grab a little more flour as needed. And then I'm just going to kind of shape it into a ball. And then I do put a little bit of flour on my rolling pin. And then we're going to start rolling it out. And I want this to be in the shape of a circle. Doesn't have to be exact, but pretty close. And I'll show you why when we get ready to put these together. Now, one thing you'll notice as you start rolling the dough out, it really likes to resist and pull back to its original shape. You see how it's just wanting to like float back to the center. So sometimes I roll it out for just a little bit. And then if you just let it rest for maybe 20 or 30 seconds, just at this stage, and then we'll go back and roll it out again. It just kind of helps that dough, I don't know, acclimate to what we're doing to it. So anyway, we've let it just sit there a little bit. Now I'm going to just go back in, put a little more flour on my rolling pin. And even though it does still kind of come back, at this point, it feels like we're making a little more progress with the dough. I'm just kind of working my way around the circle just to keep it spreading out in a pretty even pattern. And you may see sometimes some little air bubbles want to form around the edge as you're rolling it out. And I just keep going lightly and kind of help those air bubbles collapse. Okay, and this is about the size we want it to be. It's fairly thin. I'll kind of lift it up. You see it's fairly thin. It's probably no more than 1/3 to 1/2 inch maybe. And our diameter of our circles probably I don't know, 12 to 14 inches, something like that. And that's about the right size. Now, I've got a pizza cutter, and I can use this directly on my counter because it's plastic, but it works really well, but it won't harm my counter. If you use a knife, just be careful, especially depending on what kind of countertops you have. You may need to put it on a cutting board if you have one big enough. But we're going to use a pizza cutter, and we're going to cut this into 16 even slices. Try to get them as even as you can. So to do that, I just kind of start right in the middle. Go down one side, complete the other side, then go back to the middle and go the opposite direction. And so now we've got our 4 different quadrants. And I just kind of start in the center again and work my way to the outer edge of each one. And again, trying to just go as evenly as you can. If there's a little variation, it's going to be okay. But mine are always just slightly different. And then at this point, we've got 8 different pieces, and we just want to cut each one in half, and that's the size that our dinner rolls will be. So at this point, I kind of move to the outer edge, get that center point, and go to the tip of each one. And then our last one. And there we go. We've got 16 rolls. And so it's really easy to roll these up. We're going to make them kind of in the shape of a crescent roll. So these are going to be very much like what you would buy in the can, except these are going to be so much better. They're homemade. You know what's in them. But you just start at the outer edge, roll it to the center. See there, we've got just a pretty little shaped crescent roll. And I'm going to go ahead and put them on my baking sheets, and I've lined them with parchment paper. These do really well baking on the parchment paper. Now you can see from the ones I've already got on the sheet, they are similar sizes. Each one may be just slightly different, but these will have a second rise to them. So they'll puff up again. And they will be similar enough sizes that we can bake them all together, and they'll look an awful lot alike at the end. So you can see that this batch makes a large serving of dinner rolls. We're going to get 32 rolls out of this one recipe. Okay, so that is half of our rolls that we've already done. I'm going to go ahead and do the other half. And you may be wondering, wow, this seems like so much trouble. How can I do this on a day like Thanksgiving? Well, that's where the fun part comes in next, because we are going to let these rise a second time, but I'm going to show you a method where you can bake them, and you can do this a week or 2 ahead of time. And then we are going to freeze the rolls, and I'll show you exactly what to do after you take them out of the oven on the day that you want to serve them. And they are going to taste like you made them fresh that day, and nobody's ever going to know the difference. So I'll show you all of that next. I'm going to finish rolling these out, and then when these have a second rise, then we're going to go ahead and mostly bake them. The second rise sometimes won't take as long as the first rise did. So this was about 2 hours for the first rise. I would check them in about an hour after you roll them out to this stage, and then we'll see if they're ready then. Let me show you one more thing. Now that we have our rolls ready, we've got them on our trays, and they need to rise one more time. We're just going to lightly cover them again. And I just use clean towels to do that with. And then I'll check them in about an hour and see if they've risen enough to bake at that point. So that's all you need to do. I checked our rolls at 1 hour, and they were a little bit slow rising today, so I moved them over here. There's a little more heat here. I started preheating my oven, and I turned the light on under the microwave. So it's been about 1.5 hours, and they have pretty much doubled in size, as you can see. So that's the stage you want to look for. And I've got the oven at 375 degrees. Normally, if you're going to bake them and eat them right away, you want to bake them for around 15 minutes, give or take. Check your oven. If you know it cooks faster, set it a little bit under 15 minutes. But I'm going to bake these today. I'm going to check them at 12 minutes. And the reason I'm going to do that is because after they're baked, we're going to flash freeze them and then put them in freezer bags. And then I'll show you later what to do when you want to serve them after they're frozen. So we're going to bake them about 12 minutes at 375 degrees. It's been exactly 12 minutes. Let's get our rolls out. Now these look exactly the way you want them to look. Starting to get a little bit brown. If you wanted to serve them right away, you might want to leave them in just that extra minute or two if you want them a little more brown. That's your preference, really. But they're almost baked all the way through now, which is what we want. We're going to let these cool, and then we're going to get them ready and freeze them. I'll show you how. Now that we've let them cool, I'm going to bag them up. And these are freezer bags. You want to be sure they're freezer bags to protect them well. And then they're just a little bit connected. So just separate them. And we're going to line them in our bags like this. Oh, they feel so good. They feel so good. Let me show you one now. Let's get one of these. Just see how soft that is? That's perfect. Perfect, perfect. Okay, so we're going to bag them up. And they will keep nicely in our freezer. I'm just going to take our parchment paper, the same piece that we used, and I'm just going to kind of lay it nicely here. And we can lay another layer on top. And of course, all of these, it's going to take at least 2 bags. It might take 3 bags. Might can do just 2, I think. Okay, and when you get almost to the end of it being closed, when you get to almost the end of the Ziploc bag being closed, you want to get just as much air out as you can, because that's going to help keep them fresher. So don't leave a lot of air in the bag. And then I'm going to go put these in the freezer, and then I'll show you after they've been in the freezer for a day or two. I'll pull them out and show you what you do right before you serve them. I've taken them out of my freezer now, and we're going to bake them and use them today. So I'm just going to place the rolls directly on my pan. These are still frozen. If you want to let them sit out just a few minutes, you can. All right, there we go. And so now I've got my oven heated up again to 375 degrees. And so we're going to put these back in the oven. Since if you do it while they're frozen, you're going to need a little bit longer. Maybe 7 to 8 minutes will be long enough. That'll thaw them at first, and then it'll just give them a little bit more of a browning on top, and they will be perfect when you bring them out. If you let them thaw, if you let them sit out on the counter and thaw a little bit before you place them in the oven, just reduce that cooking time by a couple of minutes. So we're going to put them in the oven now, and then we'll just brush them with some butter, and they will be like perfectly freshly made homemade rolls. And there you go. See, they got a little bit more brownness. And we're going to just brush the tops with some melted butter. All right, let's see what one looks like inside. This one looks good. Let's grab it. And you can see soft, fluffy roll inside and the buttery goodness on top. Let's give it a taste. Mm-hmm. No one will ever know that you made these ahead of time and pulled them out of your freezer. They're so delicious. You can make these homemade rolls. Make them today and then get them ready and serve them with your Thanksgiving dinner. Thanks so much for joining me today at Mary Catherine's Table. I'm really glad you were here. Remember to hit the subscribe button and ring the bell if you'd like to get notifications when we come out with new videos. And remember to go out today and find someone who needs a little bit of kindness and give them some of yours.